Hey, this is Kit. We are back here at Zacuto Studios. I'm joined here today with Daniel Lupker and Rebecca Mara. Rebecca, you've been following the climate change stories all across on Heartlands Media. You've been doing great coverage, and we all know about the tragedy that's happening in California. So I think it's very important for our viewers and subscribers to understand really what's happening there and the aftermath of this devastating environmental disaster for the people of California.
Yeah, so unfortunately, this isn't something that the Californians are, is new to them. Surprisingly, the 9 most destructive wildfires in the history of California all happened within the past 3 years. 9 of the top 20 most destructive ever. Last year, I'm a catastrophe modeler working in the insurance industry, so last year we had the Tubbs fire that broke the record for the most destructive of all time in history, and that was about 5,600 homes that burned down. And to the industry, it was devastating. It was really a shock to the system, and we kind of didn't really expect it to happen again the next season. So the aftermath is going to be going on for months. We won't really know. Probably in like 2 months we'll know the dollar amount, but this year so far, California has already spent $2.1 billion on these fires. And they're not used to fighting the size of these fires. They don't have the funds. They only have the funds for the normal amount. And now resources are running low. These people that are fighting the fires are being exploited and just taken advantage of, and Trump is out there, making fun of them when people are dying.
And losing their livelihoods as well. Losing
their entire livelihoods. Yes, there is help from the federal government right now, but I mean, we need a plan for the future. As I told you guys, I, as a meteorologist, went and testified against the federal EPA when they were trying to repeal Obama's Clean Power Plan and make it, so that coal plants and oil, everyone can just pollute as much as they want with no regulations. And this is a direct result of that horrible policy. And it's just terrifying that, and it's very offensive that our president is talking down and putting the blame on the victims at such a huge rate.
There's an interesting point that I want to really talk about. It's that when we address climate change, we have an administration, and for the most part, many elected officials, both Democrat and Republican, that are either choosing to ignore climate change or to just basically remain silent about it. But the sad fact is this, and we've talked about the hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico. We've talked about the massive droughts that are happening all across the world. Climate change isn't going to go anywhere, and just because you have certain people in power that want to deny its existence doesn't mean it's not going to go away. So my concern is this: there's going to be another devastating fire on the West Coast. There's going to be another devastating hurricane, and what these are, what this is a symbol of, is mankind's impact on our ecology, on our planet's ecology, and really, there will be a scenario in which the livelihoods that we are used to right now will no longer be accessible for us. So, Rebecca, has there been any kind of data in regards to whether or not there's going to be another fire? I mean, of course, we know that there will be one, but what's the future look like for the people on the West Coast? Because this might eventually become the new normal, and devastating.
I want to add in one thing to that. From your industry, I'm sure that fire insurance is going to get more expensive. And we saw some things with, I think it was Kim Kardashian's house. They had a private fire team came in. It's like, from their point of view, it's cheaper to have your own private fire department, much like akin to ancient Rome. With I think it was Pompey's fire department.
I mean, they brought in their own fire force and built a moat around their house, literally, and saved the neighborhood, which is amazing. But the fact that those resources are not put in place for every person, I mean, it ties back to the Pentagon story. Why are we not using those funds for the fire department? Like, we don't have any defense against our own domestic issues. And
we can bomb someone really well from 100 miles away.
Yeah.
And it's real sad to see that this is the new normal in America, especially in a country where we have money to waste on a joint strike fighter. We have money to give to these large multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar corporations like Amazon. But when it comes down to providing services for the people, we don't have them. And this should anger a lot of people. I always tell people, if this upsets you, now's the time to get involved. Now, we saw in 2018 a large turnout of voters. It's not enough, though. We have to remain actively involved. All these offices, whether it's running for office of President of the United States to your local alderman office, you have to step up. You have to make your voices heard. You have to be involved. And you have to let these elected officials know that they are public servants. They work for us, not the other way around. And we have to basically retake our democracy and start pushing forward. If we remain silent on this issue, if we remain silent on the issue of climate change, or either that, not even holding these large industries accountable, what kind of country do we live in then? We're going to probably be living in a system that's oppressive, only works for the top 1%. Yeah, it's great that Kim Kardashian's house was saved, but how many houses were destroyed because of this devastating fire on the West Coast? I have family members that live on the West Coast. You two know people who live on the West Coast. We have friends and relatives, and if they're going to be burnt out of their homes and they're this close to becoming homeless, that shows to me that right now we have a country that says that it's okay, or at least the establishment is saying that that's okay. But that's the problem with neoliberalism. It doesn't look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is this: people are trying to make ends meet, yet we're constantly getting screwed over. And what I want to ask you guys is, how do we actually continue that voter involvement and actually people really talking about climate change? Because when we see on corporate media, you have CNN having a climate change scientist on there and then a climate denier, and they say, well, 50-50.
It's not 50-50. It makes me angry because they try to, if anyone tries to say the mainstream news talks about climate change, they don't. They literally hire climate change deniers as their hosts. So that's who you're getting your source of information from, when really the only scientists that deny climate change are the ones that are paid by the Heritage Foundation and the big oil companies.
But what's interesting about that is it so happens that these same news companies also get investment from those same oil companies. So it's almost as if, again, to our previous story, they're not really focused on educating people on what's happening. They're worried about making sure that their donors, their contributors.
Yeah, and it all comes down to profit. Basically, I was listening to David Harvey, who's a philosophy dissident and economist, and he was saying that if our societies revolved around money and profit, then it goes against nature, and ultimately it is a recipe for human exploitation.
You're watching Hard Lens Media.